What if the monsters we whispered about in the dark weren't just stories, but neighbors we never truly met? Pure knockouts, and welcome back to another episode of Thoughts That Keep Me Up at Night with Kin. I think you understand by now that I'm Kin. Last week we dimmed the lights and tried to discover if horror films were a little more real than we thought. This week we're turning off the lights entirely and diving back into the dark with a thought that's not only been haunting my mind, but the Intermountain West for generations. Who or what are its cryptids? Now, as someone who lives in the Intermountain West, there are obviously some cryptids whose legends I'm very aware of, such as the Skinwalkers, which we will cover. But there are still some that I cannot confirm are myth or legend. Just like every time, we're going to break it down in our 4-act cycle. But as I reformatted in last week's video, instead of going through the where it came from, how it evolved, why it matters now, and what's next, I'm going to break it down into 4 different categories. I mentioned them already, but we are going to talk about the Skinwalkers of Utah, the red-headed Cannibals of Nevada, Montana's Shunka Warakin, and the Headless Horseman of Wyoming. Before we start our late night tour, a brief survival tip. B0 Plastic, an eco-friendly sponsor of this podcast, makes sustainability a lot less terrifying. Just a heads up, the link is stalking you in the description below, but do not worry, I will defend you with the details later. Grab your lanterns, kids, because the trail gets darker from here. Now, even if you've never been to Utah, I'm sure you have seen pictures of its majestic desert beauty. You have red rock and white rock and 4 different desert climates in one state. It's expansive and massive and beautiful. So, if you'll just imagine you're driving down a dirt road through the deserts on a moonless Utah night. Your headlights cut across some sagebrush, and for just a moment, you think you see movement out of the corner of your eye. Then you realize it's keeping pace with you. Fast. Too fast. And when it finally turns its head, you swear the eyes looking back at you aren't even animal at all. The Navajo call these beings skinwalkers. They have a cultural name for them, but out of respect, I won't say it. Skinwalkers are not spirits, nor are they ghosts, but human beings who were said to have broken such sacred taboos that they were able to wield the dark magic of using an animal's skin to transform themselves from human predators like coyotes, wolves, owls. All omens of a skinwalker. In northeastern Utah, there is a ranch called Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, that is really its name. And the stories there pile up like bones. Cattle drained of blood, glowing lights darting across the mesas, and figures that vanish into the desert as quickly as they appear. Now, for outsiders, it's basically just a bunch of UFO conspiracy theorists and a reality TV concept. But for Navajo families, it's not entertainment. To even say their name aloud is to draw their gaze. Hence why I didn't say it. And maybe that's the real nightmare. You don't have to believe in them for them to believe in you. My indigenous and Native American heritage aside, the Skinwalker stories chill me to the bone. Not just because they very may well be true, but because the idea that we can create something just by believing in it is a wild and unlimited idea. Now, if these particular cryptids don't do it for you, let's trade the desert for something even stranger. A cave where giants may have feasted. Long before neon lights turned Nevada into a gambler's paradise, the Northern Paiute told of a terror that lived in the caves of Lovelock. They called them the TTK, giant red-headed cannibals who raided villages, dragging away the unlucky and leaving nothing but bones. Legend says that the Paiute finally fought back, driving the giants into a cave and setting it ablaze, trapping them inside as screams echoed through the night. Centuries later, in the early 1900s, miners excavating bat guano, of all things, in that same cave, claimed they had found bones, big ones. Too big, they said, to belong to ordinary humans. Skulls, femurs, and relics of something enormous. Naturally, mainstream archaeologists dismissed these claims. And soon, like so many legends, the bones went missing. To some, the TTK were just an enemy tribe, exaggerated into monsters. To others, they're proof of a forgotten race, maybe even the biblical Nephilim. But here's the thing. Whether you believe in giants or not, the cave still sits in Nevada's Badlands, and people still swear that you can feel something watching you as soon as you step inside. Growing up in this part of the country, there has been a constant joke that Nevada is the devil's playground. Las Vegas is one thing, but deep in the expansion of rock and sand, I feel exists a whole other animal. Speaking of different animals, if you want to keep your footprint smaller than, say, red-headed cannibal, our sponsor has you covered. B0 Plastic makes eco-friendly swaps easier than tracking myths. All products sold are guaranteed to be 100% environmentally friendly, vetted by the CEO and founder to ensure credibility, produced and made in the USA, and accessible as well as affordable. Some of those daily items include things such as toothpaste and dental floss, laundry detergent and lint balls, dish soap and dishcloths, and trash and waste bags. If that sounds like your type of research, then at the end of this episode, I encourage you to scroll on down to the description, click on the link provided, and use code KIN, that's K-I-N, for 10% off your very first order. It's a really easy way to support yourself, our planet, my sponsor, and of course, this podcast. So if you decide to add it to your toolkit, I really appreciate your contribution on behalf of B0 Plastic, myself, and the monsters in your backyard. The Madison River Valley in Montana is big sky country, but the silence there has teeth. In the 1800s, farmers began to whisper tales of an animal that looked like a wolf, but wasn't. Dark fur with a hyena-like body, and massive. A predator that didn't just kill livestock, but shredded them. There was one rancher by the name of Israel Amon Hutchins, who accomplished the unaccomplishable and finally shot the animal and, in all style, had it mounted. For years, it sat in a museum, a grim trophy of the frontier. Then, of course, it disappeared. No record, no explanation. However, decades later, in 2007, a cryptozoologist by the name of Lauren Coleman claimed to have found that very same mount. Dusty and half forgotten. It now sits in a museum in Enos, Montana. Skeptics who have come to see the mount argue that it was nothing more than a larger-sized wolf. But believers whisper that it was indeed the Shunka Warakin, which essentially is a throwback to the dire wolves that should have died out over 10,000 years ago. But the real unease comes when you're standing in the silence of the Montana mountains, listening to coyotes howl, and then suddenly stop. The silence that follows feels less like peace and more like an omen. Now, I've been to the Montana mountains, and they are more majestic and expansive than I could probably accurately describe. There's a certain energy about them, like you're among more than just the pine trees. So by this point, we've faced shapeshifters, giant cannibals, and ghostly wolves. But our final story Oh, it rides. And it has no head. The Wind River Mountains are wild country. Storms sweep in without warning. The fog clings to the trees like smoke. In the 1860s, soldiers and trappers alike began telling the same story. A rider cloaked and headless, thundering across the ridge on horseback. One army officer swore he saw it during a violent storm. A decapitated figure moving silently through the trees and vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Indigenous accounts paint him as a spirit of vengeance, furious over desecrated burial grounds. Settler legends turned him into an outlaw, executed and left without a head, now cursed to ride forever. Skeptics dismiss it as an illusion of the eyes, from the fog or the shadows or a drunken campfire night. But if you've ever camped in the Wind River Mountains, wilderness, you know how quickly your eyes play tricks in the storm and how loud a hoofbeat can sound in the dirt when you're alone. Because sometimes the thing chasing you isn't behind you at all. It's already there, waiting in the mist. The high plains of Wyoming is a brutal and harsh environment, where wind whips through your bones and the wild grass bows at its command. But I would say it's also a spiritual place, where the sound of that same wind is more like a voice, quietly calling you further into its depths. Okay, creepy kids, we definitely went down a dark, nightmarish trail on that one, but let's quickly recap. We went over the Skinwalkers of Utah, the red-headed giant cannibals of Lovelock Cave in Nevada, the Headless Horseman of Wyoming, and of course the Shunka Warakin of Montana. Whether you believe in these particular cryptids or not, there's no denying that their stories live on through the ones who hold their experiences as truth. And maybe there's a reason for that. Speaking of myths and legends, let me remind you about my brand new newsletter. If you go to Thoughts That Keep Me with Kin at Substack.com, you will be able to subscribe to my brand new newsletter for absolutely free. And you will have access to poll ideas, behind the scenes content, and of course, updates on the latest episodes. Remember to go check out Be Zero Plastic if you are interested in eco-friendly alternatives and a one-stop shop. And thank you again to Be Zero Plastic and all of you for making this podcast happen. Next week, we dive into some unsolved mysteries that make me question literally everything. Remember to subscribe if you have not already, and click that little notification bell if you would like to be updated when the next episode drops. We have a new episode every Thursday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and any sleepy session interview on Sunday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can obviously find this podcast here on YouTube, and it will very soon be available on Spotify. Thanks for joining me on another Restless Nights Knockouts. I can't wait to see you next week, but until then, you know the drill. Say hey to the dark side.